Hey guys, I'm Brandon from Sasquatch Studios, and if you don't know my story, over 2 years ago now, I quit my job, I sold my house, and my wife and I have been building this indie game dev studio together. And most of you watching this are probably indie developers. And I know that a lot of you watching this are working on your games part-time outside of a normal full-time job. And I know that for a lot of you, getting to the point where you're actually able to quit your job and work on games full-time is the ultimate dream. So I just want to share my reality of what it's been like to be a full-time entrepreneur running an indie studio. And just to paint you a little picture so that you've got the full story, I do not have employees, I have not made it big. I'm still working on my first game and I'm not working on it full-time, not even close, because the stuff that's actually been paying the bills takes up the majority of my time. But as I recently said in our Q&A video, we're squeaking by. We're managing to pay our bills with this studio. And we've been living off of savings from the sale of our house for a really long time. That was our shortcut into getting to do this full time. So let me just say first and foremost that I would never recommend that anyone take this path. Obviously, you should always, first and foremost, do what is best for you and what's best for your family. But we made a big jump. We took a big risk. I've always been prepared to have to go back to get a full-time job if I had to, but it's never reached that point. Now, I just want to say that running a game studio and figuring out how to pay the bills with an indie studio is a challenge and a joy. There are a lot of contradictory emotions when it comes to doing this. There are hardships, there are triumphs. And I don't want to scare you away from chasing your dreams, but I also don't want to coddle you and make you think that every day is like Christmas doing this either. I just want to tell you what it's been like for us, because my experience is the only one I know. Now, my experience has been that you will both suffer from and fall in love with the entrepreneurship factor, which is waking up in the morning when you decide to wake up in the morning, having nowhere to go and nothing to do that day except where you decide to go and what you decide to do. And that is both amazing and absolutely terrifying at the same time. But after you quit your job, you'll be riding a high on that for a little while. But you have a mortgage or rent, you have gas and your car and hydro and water and internet and cell phones, and you don't even have benefits anymore to go to the dentist or get new glasses or anything like that. Why do you think I've been wearing crooked glasses for the last 2 years on this channel? But it's life, right? You have all these things that you need to pay for, and you have no stable paycheck or knowledge of where 100% of your future revenue is going to come from. So you get to work at your own pace, you get to set your own hours, and you get to work on whatever you feel like working on that day until you feel like being done for the day. But as an indie developer, if you're doing it full time, especially if you're like us at this studio and you're kind of still finding your footing and you don't have any game revenue coming in from past games, then you've probably got some hard choices to make. One of them is, what is the right action to take that day? Because for some of you, and this is the case for me a lot of the time, working on your game, for me working on Samurado, that's not always the best course of action for me to take that day. Which sounds really weird because I'm a game developer, but currently on a day-to-day basis, working on my game doesn't pay the bills. It will eventually pay something, but until it's made, it's not going to pay me anything. So for us at this studio, a big part of our entrepreneurship factor is figuring out, okay, how can we work on Samurado and continue to make progress on this game all the time while finding ways to earn enough to pay our bills that month so that we can continue to work on our game. That's ultimately why we decided to stop just focusing on devlogs on this channel and make so much more content. I'm still neck deep in indie content every single day that I'm working, whether it's working on Samurado or writing the script for this video, or making a Unity tutorial, or talking to sponsorship partners and just dealing with all of that. I love what I do, but I don't always get to work on my game as much as I would like, and it drives me crazy. So if you are planning on starting your own studio, this might not be the case for you, but it could be that you might need to think about what kind of studio you want to run. Because at least as far as I can see it, there are only two kinds. One is the kind that works 100% full-time on their game. It's obviously possible. There are lots of studios out there that do this. The second kind is the kind that works part-time on their game and part-time on other revenue-generating activities, which I think is the case for a lot of indie developers who also have YouTube channels. So it's possible to work on your game full-time, but if you are working full-time on your game, how are you keeping the lights on? Did you accumulate some savings? Did you find a grant or an investor? Or maybe you found a publisher or you got a Kickstarter funded. But no matter where your funding came from, there are going to be expectations of when your game is going to be released. So there's just a lot of all this in running your own indie studio. There's a lot of non-game dev related things. There's a lot of business. There's a lot of money discussions and budgeting and all of that. I like to think of myself as a creative and constantly having to mix business stuff, with creative stuff, isn't always my favorite thing. I don't want to have to think about money, but this is the reality of running an indie studio. So if you're thinking about starting your own indie studio, there are a million ways of getting funding and finding success in this industry. But no matter which road you go down, there are going to be a lot of elements involved that are not game dev. And a lot of them are not fun, but they are important. So let's talk about time for a second. On a regular workday, I get up, I get the kids ready for school, I drop them off, and then I come home to an empty house with my wife and complete and total freedom. Now, I've noticed that there are two ways that this can go, and it's weird. One is you might suddenly start noticing all of the stuff around the house that needs to get done. The dishes, the laundry, the garden needs weeding, something in the house is broken and you need to repair it. Or you might even just be feeling really lazy all of a sudden and you just have trouble forcing yourself to get to work for that day. Okay, that's one way. But I often struggle with the other thing that often happens, which is you sit down and you start working and you don't know how or when to stop working. When I had a job, any job, I never really cared about how much I got done in a workday. I did enough to keep my boss off of my back, but when 4:30 hit, that was it. I was done. And I never gave work a second thought. When you're running your own studio, at least my experience has been, I never really feel like I'm done my workday. Ever, at any point in the day. Maybe I edited a whole tutorial that day. Who cares? I didn't get any Samurado time in. Maybe I spent a whole day working on Samurado. Who cares? I didn't manage to record my podcast or record my video that day. There's always, always, always more to be done. So I work until my kids are done school, and then I go and I pick them up, bring them home, and then I usually work until dinner time. We make supper and we eat, and I spend a little bit of time with my kids, but I still didn't get everything done on my list, so back to work I go. And on a lot of days, it's bedtime and I'm still on my computer working. And I'm sure that this sounds absolutely miserable. Here's the thing though, I love the work that I do. And what's more is I care about the work that I do, unlike what I did at my job. I take pride in the work that I do. I'm in my late 30s and I'm making way less money than I did when I was in my early 20s, but I love what I do, which I think is more important. But the great part about the entrepreneurship factor is if I run this indie studio right, then my income should continue to increase from this business. I don't want to put the message out there that if you're running your own indie studio, you will be poor unless you make a smash hit. That absolutely does not have to be true. So the reality has been that running my own studio has felt a lot more like I'm trying to run and operate a profitable business more than I'm just sitting in my office coding my dream game all day long. It's been a lot of time management, budgeting, working on YouTube, and yes, working on my game as well. It's been a very different journey than I thought it would be when I first started, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Running an indie studio for me has a lot of elements that I don't necessarily like, but everything else offsets that. It's still incredible and it's still the ultimate dream. And I owe it all to you guys. I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in and watching the videos. Thank you to my patrons. None of this would be possible without you guys. If you enjoyed the video, then thank you if you leave a like or a comment. See you in the next one. Bye.